Good evening, everybody. My name is Brian Parks. I'm the CEO here at the JamFactory. And let me first start by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land, the Kaurna people, and let me pay my respects to their elders, past and present. And on behalf of the board and the staff here at the JamFactory, welcome. I'm absolutely delighted to have Jeff Mincham's Living Treasures exhibition here at the JamFactory. The Living Treasures series, and in the absence of VIP guests, what I should have done was say a very, very warm welcome to Jeff Mincham himself. The Living Treasures series was developed by Object Gallery in Sydney, and it's made an extraordinary contribution to building the scholarship and profile of the crafts in this country. Its ongoing success, and more than 300,000 people have seen a Living Treasures exhibition. It's a testament to the value of craft practice in our society. I had the very, very wonderful privilege and pleasure of phoning Jeff when I worked at Object to let him know that he had been selected as the 2009 Living Treasure. And the elation and humility in equal measure from someone with such an extensive experience at the top of their game was for me a touching and, I have to say, characteristic, now that I know Jeff well, response. And I hope that the project has been as good for Jeff as it has for all those who've been touched by it. When I first saw the work, I was gobsmacked by its scale and beauty. And I got the whole landscape thing. Jeff told me about the Coorong and the Florio Peninsula and the Adelaide Hills, but I'd never been to any of these places, and I loved them for their formality. Now that I live here and I've seen these places firsthand, I see the works through another set of eyes, and they've given me another wonderful set of readings, and I thank Jeff for that. But I'm not going to talk about the exhibition anymore. Our guest speaker tonight has a better insight into the history and the driving passion of Jeff's work than most. Margo Osborne was the author commissioned to write the wonderful monograph that accompanies this exhibition, and I encourage you, if you haven't already got a copy, to grab one. Margo has worked in the arts for many, many years, both as a freelance curator and writer, and with an organisation such as the Adelaide Festival, the Contemporary Arts Centre of South Australia, and of course here at the JamFactory. And I'm very pleased that we'll be working with Margo again, as she'll be joining Margaret Hancock Davis and myself to curate JamFactory's 40th anniversary exhibition in 2013. I'll be back up here in a moment with some important thank yous, but please now welcome Margo Osborne.
This exhibition is a significant moment for Jeff Mincham, and I'm very honoured that he has invited me to open it. After 2 years of touring Australia, the exhibition is finally coming home to Adelaide and the JamFactory. There is a symmetry to this homecoming, for Jeff started his career as a potter working in the clay workshop at the newly established JamFactory workshops in St Peters way back in the mid-70s. And he had his first solo exhibition at the JamFactory in 1976. Today, JamFactory is approaching its 40th anniversary in 2013, and Jeff Mincham, one of its first alumni, is now being honoured as a living treasure of Australian craft. In many ways, he's an exemplar of his generation, a generation that was the first generation to study at a tertiary level in a mass way, and was a generation that was formed in the 1970s. With the ethic that was prevalent in the 1970s, which was very much about truth to materials. And Jeff has stayed true to that idea. In his book, Jeff captures the heady atmosphere of those early years. Well, it's our book, because it's about Jeff and it's written by me, but it's mainly wonderful pictures of his work. So he said of those years at the JamFactory, it was in its formative years and it was very exciting stuff. Things were ripping along. I can't express it the way Jeff does because he has a particular way of saying things. It wasn't terribly well thought through. It was a great idea, badly planned, but it was nevertheless hugely rewarding for the people who were there. It was a very exciting time. The conditions were abysmal, the equipment was dreadful, but we lived and worked in and around it and we had a lot of fun. So that's where the JamFactory started. There's probably a few similarities today, but only a few. Tonight is a homecoming for the exhibition in a more subtle sense. It is here in Adelaide, more than anywhere else in Australia, that we can understand how closely Jeff's work is embedded, in particular South Australian landscapes, especially the Coorong, where he grew up, and the Adelaide Hills, where he's lived all his adult life. Congratulations should go to the exhibition curator Sandra Brown of Object for her sensitive use of photographic panels to reveal those connections to the Coorong and the Adelaide Hills. And also congratulations to JamFactory's curator and exhibitions manager Margaret Hancock-Davis for installing the exhibition to make those connections visible to us. As the author of the book which accompanies this exhibition, I spent a great deal of time in Jeff's company while he was making this work. Roughly every couple of weeks over about a year, I would wend my way up from the city, up the winding dirt road that is a shortcut through the bushland to Cherryville, passing through the low-lying clouds that shroud the hills until I reached the very top of the ridge. Just below, perched on a steep slope, is the stone cottage and studio where Jeff and his wife Lexi, and at that time their daughter Claire, lived since the mid-70s. A vista of hillsides furrowed with crops stretches into the distance. On my visits, Jeff and I would sit with a tape recorder as he talked about his journey as a potter over the past 3.5 decades. Running through a narrative of constant experiment and evolution, there are constants that connect his early raku forms and his latest work. In the book, I have a quote from Jeff of one of those interviews as saying, "The thing is still with me, the idea of robust elegance, graceful in proportion but strongly stated and rugged. The quality that I never want to lose is the clayness of clay." And I think you'll all find that very much in evidence in the work here tonight. There's an unpredictable side to kiln firing, and Jeff has made this element of chance part of the core aesthetic of his ceramics. There is often a finely poised tension between his controlled mastery and the happy accidents of firing. Every now and then during my visits, we would go out to the studio and Jeff would check on the progress of the latest piece coming out of the kiln. Sometimes he was pleased, other times the experiment had not worked and the piece, representing hours of labour, was consigned to the junk pile. This morning I asked Jeff whether he regarded himself as a potter, a ceramicist, an artist, or that horrible new weasel word invented by bureaucrats, a creative. He replied that it all depended. Sometimes he woke up in the morning as a potter, but by the afternoon he was an artist. Craft practitioners have to negotiate this world of labels. It's possible to be proudly a craft practitioner, as many in this room probably are tonight, but to know that when you're at the top of your game, you're also making art. Eminent British potter Alison Britton once wrote of clay that, as a material, it is prone to metaphor. Over the years, Jeff's ceramics have moved gradually away from decoration and towards metaphors of the connectedness between self and place. I have no doubt that the work here tonight is not only some of the finest ceramics in Australia, but also, in its evocation of the spirit of place, some of the most eloquent Australian art dealing with the landscape of South Australia. And I'm just going to quote from Jeff. He says, "I've gone from a feeling that I can depict the landscape to wanting to impart its mood, and I can frame in ceramics the spirit of the land and the landscape and the things that are going on in it. The process of time, nature, erosion, weathering, changes of season, the growth of trees, the death of trees, the shredding of bark, all the events that are taking place in the landscape. I'm still very much in love with the ceramic process, and I do it in form, in vessels, as I've always, but I'm looking for some of the more subtle, sublime and less visible qualities of landscape to be reflected in the work. And the knowledge I have of the Japanese aesthetic to ceramics helps me greatly." So I think that gives you a little insight into the work, but it's impossible in the short time that one has for a speech. So I'm highly recommending to you the book, because I spent a year with Jeff talking to him about his journey and about his work, and I think you'll find it's very interesting read. I mean, I feel very happy with it. It's been very well received in the other places where the exhibition has toured, and it's selling very well here. In fact, I think JamFactory had to quickly rush and reorder a number of copies because it had already sold out. Jeff and I are perfectly happy to sign copies for you if you would like. So the other thing quickly I would just say is that Jeff has also a very strong record of public service that doesn't exactly relate to his work as an artist or a craft person, but he's been a sort of mayor in the Adelaide Hills Shire. He's worked for the voluntary fire service for 20 years. He's been on the Regional Development Council, and he's done a lot of things behind the scenes in South Australia. And as a result of both his art and of his public service, he was awarded as a member of the Order of Australia a couple of years ago. He summed up his approach to public life saying, "I have a mission, a strong sense of mission, but my thoughts about public life are that there are 4 rules. 1, do no harm. 2, do as much good as you can. 3, know when your time's up. And 4, expect no thanks." I hope this exhibition and the accompanying book are thanks indeed for Jeff's great contribution to craft in Australia, and I have much pleasure in declaring the exhibition open.